Kevin Stefanski talked about how different this offense will look with Deshaun Watson.
I think we definitely have to adapt to our players, and certainly the quarterback is so important in what we do. So we will make sure that we do what Deshaun does best, what the quarterback room does best. So those are the type of things that we're working through as we study, as we've studied Deshaun and Jacoby and Josh, and understand what those guys do best, and make sure that we can do that come September. To get there, though, there's a lot of meetings, there's a lot of install, there's a lot of practice that has to occur to ultimately tell you how much we will change. I think, Mary Kay, with the quarterback, you do want this to be a collaboration, and it's really all quarterbacks are different, and you want to make sure you meet them where they are. Deshaun's very open-minded to trying different things that he hasn't done. Similarly, we're very open-minded to putting in schemes that he has a lot of success in that we haven't done, for instance. So it's an ongoing conversation, but just, I would tell you, day in and day out with him, just spending time with him yesterday and today, he wants to certainly grow as a player, and he wants to try different concepts. And I think that's the beauty of the spring.
And Ashley, having listened to that, how different do you think this offense will look with Deshaun Watson?
I think totally different, especially compared to what we saw last year. I don't know if there's a percentage on it of how different it's going to look, but I would just say it's going to look extremely different. Again, when we talked about the Browns last season, so many of the issues came from, I think Baker Mayfield's capabilities right now, depending on what was hindering those capabilities, whether it was the shoulder injury, whether it was opposing teams taking away those boots and rollouts that he was so successful at. There was just not a consistent downfield passing attack for most of the year. And I think now going forward, you have that. And, it's interesting to hear Kevin Stefanski talk about how it is going to be a collaborative effort. And I think for a lot of quarterbacks in the league, that's true, but especially when you have Deshaun Watson, who on the field is basically a top 5 guy in the league, no question, right? Like, he's always going to be in that conversation in these next few years, I think. So it was interesting to hear that. And of course, we didn't really get much insight into just how different this offense is going to look. They're not going to give away everything in April when we are still months and months away from fully understanding what it could look like. But I definitely think a lot of it just goes back to Deshaun Watson's arm, number one, and his ability to keep plays alive with his feet. And you actually look at that quarterback room in general with Jacoby Brissett and Josh Dobbs, and there's a similar skill set there, right? Jacoby Brissett, very similar skill set, just a little bit bigger. I think he has about 2 inches on Deshaun Watson height-wise. So overall, I just think they've built this room kind of around Deshaun's strengths, and then obviously, as they await news on a suspension, which we did not get any news on that today when we spoke to Kevin Stefanski and players, we don't know what that possible suspension from the NFL for Deshaun Watson might be. But it makes things easier to translate if you do need Jacoby Brissett to jump in there and start a handful of games for you. So I think it's really interesting over the last few weeks to look at how this room has been built around their strengths. It just all seems to me like the biggest goal was to change how this passing game looks like. And I think they're going to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And when you think about similar skill sets, that means you block the same up front. Nothing has to change, and that's critical if you're going to have to interchange quarterbacks for a couple of games.